Hello guys, here to talk about the box office here, and these are the numbers for the movies here. So Dune passed $200 million, and Kung Fu Panda 4 passed $100 million. So Kung Fu Panda 4, we do not have the global box office in yet for any of these movies yet, but Kung Fu Panda 4 is probably gonna break even. There are people who don't really like this movie. There are people who like this movie. It's a mixed bag, apparently. But I'm surprised because you'd think that people would go against the critics, go against the grain of, Rotten Tomatoes. But no, a lot of people actually agree with Rotten Tomatoes or actually give it worse scores than Rotten Tomatoes did. Because Rotten Tomatoes only gave it like a 69%, I believe. But a lot of people don't like this movie because, apparently it acts like the third movie never happened. Okay? You know, kind of like, Toy Story 4, okay? You know, I think, DreamWorks is obviously doing this because they know people are going to see this movie. And it's having pretty decent legs. Okay, $170 million, yeah, it's having pretty decent legs. We'll compare this to the Kung Fu Panda series. How it's doing here. It's actually doing similar to the first movie, which is pretty strange. Of course, this is, of course, unadjusted for inflation. Of course, the first movie adjusted for inflation did far better, obviously. But if you compare it to the previous entry, this movie is doing far better on day 10, having far better legs. But I think Kung Fu Panda 3, but yeah, Kung Fu Panda 3 they released in January. But the movie's having far better legs than Kung Fu Panda 3. Yeah, it's the movie the Kung Fu Panda 3 had pretty great weekend by weekend holds. Okay. But this movie is basically doing similar to the movie, but it's having better day-to-day holds for some reason. But the numbers are far higher than Kung Fu Panda 3, which is at 86 million. Meanwhile, Kung Fu Panda 4 already passed. And this is, of course, adjusting for inflation. But if we're in Kung Fu Panda 2, it's actually it's actually 20 million behind the second movie if you adjust it for inflation, but you include the actual numbers, it's doing better than Kung Fu Panda 2. But these numbers, don't let them deceive you, because this is, of course, you have to factor in inflation into the box office numbers. But here, and Kung Fu Panda 4 is still doing well despite its mixed reception. We'll play into the reception of its sequel if they make it, because I think they'll probably make a fifth movie, given the success of Kung Fu Panda 4. I think a fifth movie is given at this point. But Dune Part 2 is actually performing better per feeder than Kung Fu Panda. Dune, again, made $205 million. It's having pretty good legs as well. $205 million is basically doing the average movie it is doing. So if you compare it to, Oppenheimer, I don't know why people compare it to the Marvels. I don't know. It's gonna be below Oppenheimer. So Oppenheimer ended up with 125 million. So currently in day 17, Oppenheimer that's 228 million. Dune Part 2. So it's gonna probably end up making around $300 million or $290 million at the box office domestically. There is no updated international numbers for this movie yet, but the movie has probably broken even by this week, as it is doing really, really well internationally as well. But it's probably not going to make the same amount of money globally as Oppenheimer, or $1 billion. Which means that one predicts about Hollywood not having any $1 billion hits is pretty likely at this point. But again, we still have a whole year to go through. So yeah, Dune Part 2 is doing relatively well for itself, making $205 million domestic. So the legs are actually good for this movie. I could also compare it to like Top Gun, but Top Gun had a much larger opening, that's why it made so much money. Offer the King. Yeah, this is why I call it the Grace Weekend for both Dune 2 and Kung Fu Panda. It's gonna be a breathing room because no one is watching this movie. Offer the King. No one is watching this movie. Absolutely no one is watching this movie. It's gonna probably have horrible wigs. Judging based off its day to day, no one is interested in this movie. Again, another non-franchise movie that's failing, you know, as well. But this movie did far worse than the projections. It was projected to open to like 10 to 15 million, but only opened to 7.5 million. So empty theaters for Offer the King. Imaginary actually had a pretty small drop, but again, there's no international numbers here. This movie needs to make way more money for it to break even, obviously. But it had a pretty well hold. But again, there's nothing coming out. That's the only reason why a lot of people don't like this movie. I know for sure. But again, it's holding pretty well because of the lack of new releases. Next is Love Lies Bleeding. Never heard of this movie before. No one is gonna see this. 2.7 million for this movie. It's another one of those movies where they released like 2 theaters. It did pretty well, so they released it in much more theaters. But not many people went to go see it. Again, just because something does well in its, 2 theater phase doesn't mean it's gonna do well in the wide release. It seems it's always the case these limited to wide release movies. So yeah. Next is Bob Marley Love 1. I think this is the only movie with actual numbers in. But the movie held pretty greatly. But it is very early. I don't think they have updated international numbers for this movie yet either. But I think this movie could possibly still break even. But they have not yet to release it in Japan, which is coming out later. Malaysia. They have released it in the Philippines, and Singapore, and Taiwan, and Vietnam. So it's mostly the Asian markets it just released in, except for Japan and Malaysia. I don't really think the movie it's gonna do well in Japan or Malaysia. I don't think people care enough about Bob Marley in Japan. Okay, the audience does not exist in Japan for that artist. Then we have this movie, American Society of Magical Negroes. Yes, we have to talk about the American Society of Magical Negroes. That's the actual title of the movie. That's the actual title of the movie. Okay, and guess what? No one went to go see it. $1.2 million for American Society of Magical Negroes. I knew this movie was gonna flop too. I know. I think, yeah, this movie's gonna flop. But I think based on the trailers, no one was gonna watch this movie. Which we were right. No one was gonna watch this Harry Potter knockoff. Okay. This is basically a Harry Potter knockoff, and no one's going to see it. So I don't know the budget for this movie, but I bet it's gonna lose money either way. This movie made like no money. Empty theaters for American Society of Magical Negroes. Again, I think everybody knew that was gonna flop as well. Madame Web also is no longer on here either. I don't think they have added Madame Web's numbers in yet. Next we have Ordinary Angels, which made $18 million. Again, movie barely held on as well. Look at the previous chart. So, Migration, Madame Web, Cabrini, they don't have numbers for that movie in. Yeah, most of these same movies were going to be here, but they don't have any numbers for Cabrini, so we don't. For some reason, they didn't put them in yet. They didn't put in numbers for Cabrini yet. But movies like Migration and stuff are done. Migration is done. And Madame Web is done. We won't go into cover those movies anyways, as well. But it's funny. The two major movies released, American Society of Magical Negroes, and that's the actual title of the movie. And Offer the King, both were flops. Again, Lionsgate hasn't yet another failure on their hands. Always Lionsgate with the box office flops. Okay, so I am shocked that Lionsgate isn't bankrupt at this point. Okay, I'm shocked. Like, Lionsgate, besides John Wick and Hunger Games and Saw, those are the only successful movies they really have. Okay, I'm surprised Lionsgate isn't bankrupt at this point because they produce these horrible movies that no one wants to see, like Imaginary. Okay, like no one went to go see it. Like these movies are not doing too well. I think the CEO of Lionsgate must be panicking right now. But yeah, no numbers for Cabrini. That's the only movie that they don't have numbers for in. But Kung Fu Panda 4 and Dune 2 are going to break even. I think almost certainly. So both movies are going to probably make money at the very end of the day. So Dune Part 2, great hold globally for its second weekend. It'll probably have a great hold for its third weekend as well. So that's about Dune Part 2. The movie, I think, does it have any more markets to release in? I know it has released. Oh, that's why. That's why it held pretty well. Released in China. That's why. But it doesn't really have any releases. So yeah, its last major release was China, which released on the 8th. So, is Kung Fu Panda 4 releasing in China? I bet probably is. China. Yeah, it's releasing in China on the next week. So, I expect Kung Fu Panda to have a pretty big weekend next third weekend as well. Okay, as it's releasing in China, it's also releasing in Finland, Greece, Hungary. It's also releasing in the Netherlands. It's also releasing in Italy. So you have some major markets there. It has mostly released in minor markets so far. It has released in Argentina is like Argentina and Indonesia and Kazakhstan do have potential to be massive markets. Of course, it has released in Mexico, which is a big market. Obviously, Malaysia doing pretty well now. Doing pretty well in Poland. It's released in Russia, Spain, Thailand, and Vietnam. I think a lot of these Asian markets, they do have the potential to be massive markets. Like Vietnam has 100 million people, I think. It's one of the big countries in Asia. Not as big as China or India, but it is a big country compared to like Europe. Obviously, Indonesia, 200 million population. As well, of course, India, they released in India this weekend. But yeah, they don't really have any numbers except for like Mexico in. Outside of Mexico, they have no numbers in. No numbers in for because this number here they have here is last week's international numbers. They don't have them updated for this week, but I think as of this week, Kung Fu Panda 4 will probably break even. Then it's definitely not this week, probably next week. Goodbye.